Joining us now, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's a member of the Homeland Security Committee, which released the new report on the July assassination attempt against former President Trump. Senator, thanks for being with us this morning. So as you've seen all the details of this report, you all did your work. What jumps out to you? Is it the communications failures? Is it the fact that the United States Secret Service, according to your report, asked the head of Butler for more resources to protect Donald Trump and was denied? What's the headline here?
What we have here really is an accumulation of errors that produced a perfect storm of stunning failure. And it was perhaps no single cause, but eliminating any one of them might have actually saved those individuals who were harmed or one killed and the president from that injury. There was no chain of command, no pinpointing of responsibility, which I think is at the core of these failures. But also there was a lack of resources, no operable radio, no drone detection system, no counter surveillance unit. And so I think the Secret Service certainly needs more resources, but management failures are at the heart of this failure.
You know, Senator, President Trump and President Biden, other presidents have always praised the Secret Service for their loyalty and for their work and their hard work. And I know you do, too. I do as well. This Butler, Pennsylvania incident, though, stands out in so many ways. And I just want to walk through these. And you've talked about some of them. One, of course, the rooftop being left open. Inexcusable, a straight shot to the former president. They knew of the dangerous suspect 27 minutes before the shooting, and for some reason didn't coordinate and communicate to take care of that. And then this is the part that I'm wondering what you learned about this. In any past assassination attempt where there is a president or a presidential candidate, that politician, their head is shoved down, they are rushed into a waiting car and whisked out of harm's way. With Donald Trump, they didn't take him off the stage 2 minutes beforehand when they had reason to. And then after the shooting, without knowing whether there's a second and third shooter there, right? He goes, hey, let me get my shoes. They let him get his shoes. He stands up. He starts waving at the crowd. His head is above Secret Service members. I counted on this show repeatedly a Wall Street Journal video that they had posted. 10 seconds. His head was exposed, waving to the crowd, raising his fist to the crowd. This is what politicians do, but it is not what Secret Service members allow people to do. I want to know, was that a breakdown in training? How in the world did that happen? And how can we make sure that in the future, if a politician is shot at, Secret Service members will do in the future what they once did in the past, and that is push the politician's head down, shove them into a car, and whisk them away instead of keeping him exposed for another 30 seconds. Well, he gets to the car and then stands up and waves to the crowd.
Your point is profoundly important, Joe, and it ought to be a lesson for Secret Service details in the future. First, I agree with you completely. Secret Service is filled with dedicated and skilled agents who have been thoroughly trained and make great personal sacrifice and risk danger to themselves. But they need leadership and discipline and training in exactly that kind of situation. What we found here was the lack of a chain of command, nobody in charge. And that kind of leadership failure seeps down to the level of the protective detail that is guarding the president and has to tell him, even if it's Donald Trump, who relishes defying the norms, that he has to get his head down. And their job is to make sure that America's security is maintained, because that's their assignment in that situation.
Exactly. That's their job. It's not the politician's job to do it. It wasn't Donald Trump's job to do it. I always talk about 9/11 when George Bush kept ordering the Secret Service to take him back to Washington. The Secret Service agent said, Mr. President, with all due respect, it's not your plane, it's ours, and our job is to keep you safe. So they basically told him, you go back, sit down and shut up. We're going to get you somewhere safer. We're going to keep you alive. That's what these Secret Service agents, it's a duty they owed to Donald Trump during that time. And so I'm wondering, we've heard a lot of different theories out there. I'm curious, was this the B team that was with Donald Trump? Were these agents more were less experienced than, say, others? How did this failure in training happen so Donald Trump's head was exposed to the crowd, to a second shooter, a third shooter, a fourth shooter? Because, you know, they had warnings about a plot from Iran. Iran's not going to just have one shooter out there. They're going to have two or three. For all they knew, there was a second or third shooter. But one guy goes, clear, shooter's cleared. OK, the first shooter's cleared. Great. What about the second? What about the third? What about the fourth?
We were very lucky that there was no second or third shooter, and that a counter sniper team had been assigned for the first time to any presidential candidate. So that's the good news here. But we're continuing our investigation into precisely the question you're raising. Was it the B team? Was it the A team, but simply a failure of communication to them about this suspicious individual with a rangefinder out there? Was 2 minutes warning enough time? But then when the actual shooting occurred, did they take sufficient action quickly enough to safeguard the president? Because that's their job. And this kind of leadership failure, I think, requires fundamental and far-reaching reform. I'm in favor of more money, but there has to be better management. And I believe that in addition to what we've mentioned as the possible causes here, the threat level has to determine not the office held or the individual, but the threat level. In this case, the Iranian threat was never communicated to the relevant people. Thomas Crook was not in any way tied to Iran. We can dispel those conspiracy theories. There was no finding in our report about that kind of threat underlying Crook's actions here. But the threat level has to be determined, and you're absolutely right. Secret Service has to regain the ethos that their priority and their sole mission is to protect that person that they are assigned to safeguard.
Senator, you're also chairing a hearing today looking into the ongoing inquiry into Boeing, and there's going to be a staff memo released. Can you share with us more about that?
The Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, which I chair, and which was involved in the investigation of the July 13th assassination attempt, also has been investigating the Boeing failures because it was putting, in effect, speed of production and profits over quality and safety. And we're going to put some tough questions to the FAA based on the memo that we're releasing today that shows the FAA, in many respects, is failing to do its job to assure quality and safety. We want audits performed, better audits without notice to Boeing, protection for whistleblowers, and less reliance on Boeing employees, one mechanic looking at the other mechanic's work to determine whether, in fact, it meets the criteria.
So the FAA needs to be more proactive as well in this relationship. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. Joe?
It's always great to have Senator Blumenthal. Michael Steele, I wanted to go back to Butler because I will tell you the golf course incident, the assassination plot, actually the Secret Service, their plans worked. Of course, they need more people. They need people to be able to go around that perimeter. It's a massive perimeter with a lot of cars going past. So there's still more they could have done, but their plan worked on that day. But Michael, can you underline the danger to American democracy? Can you underline the danger to this country if something were to happen to Donald Trump, if something were to happen to Kamala Harris? We are on edge politically as a nation, and that is why it is so critical that Donald Trump's safety and Kamala Harris's safety and the vice presidential candidate's safety is paramount over these next 50 days.
Joe, you have made a point that I think everybody's kind of danced by. They've not really focused on what the lesson should be from both Butler as well as Trump's golf course incident, that the safety and security of our presidential candidates and the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is paramount, because as we saw in the aftermath of both of those assassination attempts, the conspiracy theories, the outright lying, the promulgation of all kinds of scenarios took hold of the imagination of extremes, and they began to shape what could possibly happen next. And so it is paramount that those charged with the protection of our president and vice president, the heads of our government, be on point. Just my own opinion here, just watching this whole thing. That behavior of the Secret Service with respect to letting Donald Trump stand there and fist bump in the air and then stand before he got in the car, to me, that shows a compromised detail, where they have gotten in that orbit, in that Trump bubble, and they're all about the man and all of that, all of that.
What he wants.
What he
tells
wants.
him to do. Yeah.
That's not the job. And I think that that's another aspect that Senator Blumenthal is rightly, with his committee, looking into, not just, okay, the mechanics and the protocols and the process, but the personnel who are also assigned to these individuals.
Yep. Great questions. Michael Steele, thank you very much.